Yo, welcome back to Jacobism. Today we're going to talk about a juicy topic. We're going to ring it out, and it's why you must trust yourself. There are considerable wonders as to why you should trust yourself, and I'm going to share with you the benefits of doing so and ultimately the framework of how you can apply that in your life. As I'm quite a young man, I am really yet to achieve some really amazing things in my life, but perhaps relative to who I was a few years ago, I've come a long way. And I can really attribute that to trusting myself. So I'm going to share with you the framework and some personal anecdotes, and hopefully you can use that for yourself. Let's get into it. So now it's time to exemplify why you should trust yourself with an anecdote. For me, it all started in August 2017, results day. And I had fucked around throughout my whole A-levels, and I was only expecting 2 because they made me drop my third A-level twice. And I turned up on the day, opened my results, I got a B and a D. Now I hadn't done a lot of revision, but I wasn't really disappointed because I didn't really give a shit. That was partly because I had other plans and they didn't need grades, never mind good ones. And this is partly why I flopped. My focus was divided on 2 things, my post-education plans and trying to get good grades. But since my post-education plans was not something I wanted to do long term and didn't need grades at all, it was almost like I began not to care about getting good grades. And despite all along wanting to go to university, the irony of it was that I was planning everything for when I leave leave education or kind of secondary school, and I wouldn't be able to go and enact the plan after that. And so it all got in the way and meant that I only got 2 A-levels. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can go to university with 2 A-levels. So it really was quite the folly not focusing single-mindedly on one thing. And so since I only had a B and a D, Project A-Level Resurrection was enacted, and I had to go back for another year to get at least one more qualification. I consulted my uncle, who was my de facto financial and life advisor, and he recommended a school to me in which I could do this. His position was that, not being my dad and avoiding being so at all costs, he would strongly advise me when he thought it was necessary. He believed in going to university, and he did so for me too, and suggested to me that I go back for a year, get a 3rd qualification and go off to university the following September. But despite all of his advice, he made it very clear that it was my decision at the end of the day, and he wasn't saying yes or no. He was there presenting the options and giving me guidance. Whilst I realised the need for good qualifications in life, at the time I cared about gaming, weed, my friends, trying to survive without my parents. But my degeneracy aside, I decided to go, and ultimately if I failed, there was no one else to blame but myself. It was my responsibility to get my ass out of bed. It was my responsibility to motivate myself to do all the homework. It was all my responsibility to do well, and ultimately it required me to trust myself to do things to which there was not much evidence previous to suggest that I could. And so I joined the college in roughly early September 2017. I took up a new intensive A-level course, and within a few weeks I took up a 2nd A-level course, because when I only took up the one, in my view, the best case scenario was that I would finish the year getting a B. I would have BBD, and that wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go. So the 2nd course meant that I could potentially get 3 Bs and a D, which seemed like a better prospect. It should be noted that these courses were subjects I hadn't studied before, and in the UK you do 2 years of A-levels, you do AS and A2, and I did these courses, both of them in 9 months. So two A-levels, 2 new A-levels in 1 year. Now, since it was wholly myself that made the decision to go to this really brutalizing college. It was brutal. It was 2 and 4 mock exams every alternating Monday. So you would do 2 one Monday, then 4 the next, 2, 4 every Monday that you were there. And on top of that, you had a few hours of homework every day, as well as other commitments on the weekend. And so I knew that my days of pissing around donuttery were over. And so if I stood a chance at not fucking up my last opportunity at education, I had to work like I had never worked before. I worked every day, Monday to Sunday. I allowed myself Saturday evenings off, but all homework that had to be done was done immediately from returning from college, and that was before I could enjoy any evenings. A lot of the time that meant I didn't enjoy an evening. It was just straight back to bed, do the same thing again. And importantly, it was the single-minded focus that was necessary. It was nothing else mattered. I barely fucked that year. I barely played any games, nothing. But my view was that it was a total slog for 9 months and it was all going to be over. But that was the cost of fucking around for the last, God knows, decade and a half previously. And so now it was time for the exams, the ones that mattered, the real shit. And I remember going into these exams and thinking, I don't give a fuck if I fail, because I know this shit back to front. I could teach the stuff, for fuck's sake. And I was just immensely confident. I finished the year, finished these exams, finished the year. Within about a week of finishing, those post-education plans that I had 10 months prior were enacted despite being postponed. And I just had to wait till results day 2018. So fast forward to results day 2018, again in August. And this was a different results day to any of the ones that had come before. This might seem a bit alien to those of you that had tried in your exams and revised properly and sufficiently and so on, but I actually felt anxious and nervous. You see, when you don't try, you've got nothing to lose. This time I tried and I had to lose my pride and my time. There was a lot on the line. And this is what I really realised, was that all along I hadn't tried in my exams before because I was afraid to fail. I was afraid of giving it my all and that not being good enough and my ego having to face the fact that in some way I was inadequate. It acted as a kind of self-defense cop-out because I could say, well, that wasn't representative of my full effort, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But that was a lie. I didn't know what I was capable of because I'd never really given it my all. And so it's results day. I turned up to the college on my moped. It was absolutely pissing it down, so I was absolutely drenched. And I go into the results hall to pick up my results. There's kids standing around with their parents, not something that I'd know about. And I picked up the envelope, and just as I'm pulling out the sheet, the results poke out of the top of the envelope, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I literally remember holding the sheet of paper, the envelope, shaking my head and kind of just like, ugh, rubbing my eyes. I could not believe what I was seeing. All that time, all that effort, all those Fridays. Somehow it said 2 A's. When I was looking at this envelope, I was kind of shoulders hunched, and I kind of like peered round each of my shoulders to like, God knows why, but it felt kind of like I was reading some top secret document. And I remember turning to the teacher in the hall, and I said to him, are you sure these are my results? Are you sure they're right? And are you sure you're sure? And not knowing really, but being confident in the administration of the school, he nodded. And I kind of let out a bit of a fucking get in there. And some of these parents around were kind of just like, well done. Well, I could, because it kind of like felt like I was alone in this place, like just me and this piece of paper, and I looked around, the parents were just like, well done, well done. And yeah, it was crazy. I felt a flurry of shock, disbelief, pride, happiness, and relief. And since it was exclusively my decision to go, and it was all the accountability for all the work that was done was all me, I took those fucking exams and I got those results without arguably nobody's real help or assistance. The glory was all mine. And that was, I think, the most important day of my life. It was a tipping point and changed everything forever. I learned a lot of things that day, but including but not limited to why I should trust myself even when there is evidence to suggest otherwise, and how to attain results beyond my wildest expectations. I also learned the framework for which I could be successful and therefore apply that throughout the rest of my life. So now we're going to kind of get into the practical framework of why you should trust yourself to single-mindedly focus on one thing. Of course, I learned to trust myself retrospectively from my studies, but in order to be able to get decent results down the line without evidence prior, I had to trust myself to single-mindedly focus on one thing in the hope and faith that I would get decent results eventually. If I hadn't, or had some lack of self-esteem, then I would have suffered from creeping doubts that would have derailed Project A-Level Resurrection. I will admit though that it can seem quite hard to trust yourself when you are yet to achieve anything quite significant. However, these things are built up progressively. You start with one small thing that will give you evidence to trust yourself, and that will propel you onto the next bigger thing. For example, deciding to trust myself to go back to school and actually do the work for 9 months was large enough at the time to just be outside my boundary of comfort. Nowadays, right now, I'm trying to secure debt facilities of around about a couple million quid. If I had thought of that when I was 18, it would have been swiftly dismissed. But now, it's kind of just outside my comfort zone that I feel comfortable enough and trust myself enough to push towards it. Why, you might ask, is because, as you can see, it compounds from one thing onto another to eventually a very large thing. Trusting yourself begins with one small task that you can achieve, and as the evidence stacks up, you progress onto larger challenges which ultimately require more trust. Aside from the gained benefits of trusting yourself to progress your achievements, more importantly though, trusting yourself is just a needed element of living a functional, independent life. Whether you are trying to get in shape, or get a job, or start a business, or simply just trying to not live a dysfunctional life, having faith in yourself will mean that all of these things are attainable. If you cannot trust yourself, your life will be a chaotic mess. You need to be able to trust that you can get things done. There should be no area in your life in which something goes wrong that you need to rely on somebody else to sort it out. Total and utter self-reliance is needed for a healthy existence. I'm not saying that you can't seek out other people for help and that you need to shun everybody away, but you need to be sure that if in the event that you are alone, you could sort things out by yourself. And so now, time to wrap it up. If you don't want your life to be a mess and you want to progressively achieve better and better things in life, you have to start trusting yourself. And we don't want some kind of flaccid trust. We want unfaltering, rigid, rock-solid Dwayne trust. Trust compounds, and eventually it will get you very far in life. If you've been a pathetic weasel thus far, you need to start small and build it up. Importantly though, however small it is, You need to start with a little bit of trust and then build it up. Just like myself, I went to school, going back to school, and had to take on this task with no prior evidence of why I should trust myself. But I knew that if I was to do well in it, I had to. I had to have faith in myself. It's the foundation of your self-esteem. And if it ain't up to scratch, you're going to feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, wanting to start again. Do we need to credit Katy Perry with that? This has been a very kind of personal anecdote heavy video. And to exemplify it again, my trust started with going back to school. And when I got on that results day, it was, like I said, the most important day of my life. It gave me a solid piece of evidence as to why I should trust myself. Why, when I put my all in and single-mindedly focus on one task, that I can achieve things beyond my wildest expectations. A couple years after that, I became a landlord. And a couple years later, I'm now trying to start my own private equity business. And if you had told 18-year-old Jacob that that was going to be his future, he would have taken the joint out of his mouth, he would have put the PS4 controller down, and he would have laughed in your face. And so, you don't know what you're capable of. Start trusting yourself, work single-mindedly at things, and I promise you, you will amaze yourself at what you can achieve. And so now to actually wrap it all up, I hope that what I have shared with you today has given you a framework as to how you can progressively achieve better things in life. And that I was once a little pathetic weasel bitch. And if you are, you can get out of it too. And so on that note, have a wonderful day, start trusting yourself, and thank you for watching.